Hi there, I'm Jennifer Ferguson with Artistic Painting Studio, and today I got a fabulous project for you. I'm going to teach you how to do this beautiful hammered metal finish. So let's just get started. Every time you do a project, sometimes no matter how cute they are, they just need a redo, okay? So we're redoing one of my favorite little tables here, and we're going to be starting off with a product called Texture Medium. And as I get going, I want you guys to let us know where you are tuning in from. And this is actually a new type of video. This is going to be a pre-recorded live, so I'll be watching with you. And so please just ask your questions, write in your comments, and I will answer everything I can. Okay, so to start with, as far as prep, I used some great sandpaper here. What grit was this? 150 grit, okay? Just knock down the old finish. I'm not going to bother priming because this texture medium has really great adhesion. Now, I like to use a trowel to apply this, but I don't want anybody to think they can't do this. So if you don't own a trowel, you can actually just brush on the texture medium, okay? So this is a nice, thick material that is plaster type, and we are going to be rolling that really cool roller through it, okay? So feel that you can do this either way. I'm gonna probably trowel most of this because I think I'm gonna go a lot faster if I do. The thickness should be somewhere around an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/16 of an inch thick. It shouldn't be too thick, okay? Because you're just going to end up causing more sanding issues for yourself. But somewhere between an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/16 of an inch would be good. And then, gosh, I'm just curious to where everybody is going to be tuning in from. And this is a technique that can be done on furniture, on walls, on cabinetry. It's beautiful on a lot of different surfaces. So give me a minute here, okay? And then also, don't feel like you have to try to make this perfect and even. We're human, okay? There's no way I can keep a consistent hand to only get on an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch all the way across here. So there are going to be highs and lows in your texture, which is no problem because that's just going to give you more interest in your finish. Okay, I'm just going to try to get rid of a couple of my lines, and I'm trying to get it on here to where I'm not seeing the old finish that well, so that's going to give me a good idea that I'm probably somewhere around that 1/8 of an inch, okay? And this is what's called the Ostrich Roller. And these rollers are so cool because you can do so many different looks with them. But what you want to do is when you put your roller on, make sure it's not all the way up against the handle. Give it a little bit of space so it doesn't get caught there. Make sure it's spinning really good. And then all we're going to do is roll through here. And we're going to roll through once to start with. And see how easy that was, okay? So now I'm going to kind of stagger the roller, and I'm going to roll through again because I want this to look more like a hammered metal finish so that we're just going to have this pitted look like hammered metal creates. Now, the rollers peak the material up, so Karina is on the camera. I'm going to have her get a really good close-up of this because I want you guys to see the depth and to see how the edges kind of peak up. We're going to let this completely dry as it is and then come back and sand those highs. So we're going to take a break here. We're going to get a little dry time going, and we'll be back for the next step. Thank you. Well, our first layer has dried, but I quickly wanted to just tell you guys a little bit about rollers. We're using the Ostrich Roller today for this project that creates a credible hammered metal look. But if you're interested in these, you can hit the website and there are a ton of different options, so you might want to check them out. Okay, so we're ready for layer number 2, but the first thing I did is take this beautiful piece outside, grab my 150 grit sandpaper again, and gave it a really good sanding. Okay, we want to, those highs that Karina zoomed in for you earlier, we knock those down. So when you rub your hand across it, you still can feel the texture, but it's not real rough, okay? I don't want anything to be rough or to be so uneven that you couldn't use this tabletop and set something on it. Dry time is gonna be maybe an hour or so, just depending on your environment, how hot, how cold, and just make sure you do let it dry completely, because you don't want to go on to your next step until it's dry, because otherwise you could actually capture moisture underneath, and that could cause some issues in the end. Okay, so I pulled all my tape because not only am I going to paint the hammered metal layer, but I'm also going to paint the whole top of it, and we're using Modern Masters metallic paint, and this is a color called Antique Bronze. Okay, beautiful color, and we are going to have to put on a couple of layers. Metallics are wonderful to work with, but they normally take a couple more coats than even regular paint, and that is one thing I do want to share with you as well. With this particular company is where I showed you the name. Let's see if we can get a good zoom in on that. Also, it will tell you if it's an opaque or a translucent, and that kind of gives you an idea that it should take either 2 or 3 layers of paint to get good coverage. So sometimes they might have a color that is similar, because there's like statuary bronze, there's antique bronze, there's copper, there's about 4 or 5 of them that are pretty close in coloration, and I might grab one color over the other just because maybe it will opaque quicker. Okay, now I'm using what I call a art wash brush, and I love these brushes because they really do brush the paint on nice and smooth. We've got texture, so you can see I'm kind of swirling it around a little bit and making sure that I'm trying to get that color down into all that texture. And Karina, any questions you can think of? I know Karina's behind that camera. She's being quiet though today.
What other sorts of furniture pieces is this good for?
You know, this hammered metal look we have used on quite a few different projects. We've done it for kitchen cabinetry on doing like the center panels of the cabinet doors. There's a beautiful hutch that's actually in my office that we did it on the back panel of the china cabinet area, as well as all the drawer fronts. I really don't think there's anything that it wouldn't work for, but maybe we'll be able to share some extra pictures and even give everybody a few other ideas on where to use it. So once I have 100% coverage, we're going to allow this layer to dry, and then most likely there'll be some holidays, meaning some areas that I missed, and we'll come back and put a second layer on as well. And that's just part of it. You know, it's hard, especially when you have something that's this textured, that it does seem to take a little effort to get all that color down in there. So don't be surprised after you think you've put that really good coat on that you might have to definitely come back and put a second coat on. And you want to, okay? This finish is going to take several different layers to accomplish. It's not just putting on some paint. We've got some fun stuff that we're adding, and you want to make sure you have good coverage. Okay, so take your time and make sure you come back and put your second layer on. I think it's about an hour or so maybe before you should probably recoat. With the Modern Masters, I'd have to read the directions, but I know they have their recoating directions.
Oh, I just started again.
Okay, so we're gonna let this dry. We'll come back and put on a second coat, and we'll get ready for our next layer. We'll see you in a few minutes. Well, we're finally ready for our next layer, but just to recap quickly, 2 layers of the antique bronze metallic paint, let it thoroughly dry, and be prepared that you might want to let your metallics dry just a little bit longer. They're a softer paint than regular paint, so maybe give it a few more hours, okay? Our next step is we are going to be using some of the DIY paint. We have mermaid, tail, and sea glass, I think. Yes, we do. And I'm going to show you a dry brushing technique where we're going to get like a little bit of a patina action going on this. So we are just going to pop the lids off of these cans, and I definitely have the wrong lid on the wrong can. That's why I couldn't figure out if I had the right paint. Okay, so with a dry brush, we don't need a lot of paint. Let's grab, okay, I'm just going to grab some cheesecloth to kind of offload, okay? And I am just going to roughly dry it on here, or I'm sorry, paint it on here, kind of where I think maybe I want a little bit of a patina coming through. And we're not putting a ton of paint on here. It's not like you're putting on full brush strokes, okay? You just want to have a little bit of color. And then also try not to create too obnoxious of, bad looking brush strokes. They can kind of bite into that soft paint a little bit, and that was one of the things I was talking about, of let your metallics dry a little bit longer, okay? So that you're not dealing with them being soft. Now I'm gonna go through here, and sea glass is the color that I'm working with right now, and that's my lighter color. And I'm just gonna randomly put this color on, and then I'm going to come back and throw a little bit of the mermaid tail on as well with the same technique.
So why are you choosing 2 different shades?
With a natural patina, you're never going to have one value of color. So to try to create more of a natural looking patina, I'm using multiple colors. And these are also the colors that we are going to paint the legs of the table. So I'm going to be bringing this color even down into the rest of the finish. Great question there though, because yeah, this should look really bad, okay? There shouldn't be anything really pretty about it, but you can also see as the paint's drying, it's getting much lighter. And that is one of the things with working with chalk paints, and you have to make sure that this completely dries before you go to the next step, because the next step I'm going to teach you is what's called wet distressing. So we're going to grab a blow dryer, and we are going to speed up this process, and we'll be back in a second. Looks like we're pretty good, that we're dry enough. And when you're doing a wet distress and using chalk paints, you want to make sure you allow this layer to completely dry before you go forward. So I'm using cheesecloth, and let me back up here a second. Okay, our cheesecloth comes on a bolt, and it comes off in sheets this size. I normally grab a couple of these and just turn them into a pad. I like using the cheesecloth because it's got a texture to it, which kind of just helps move the paint really well. It's better than just a terry rag or like t-shirt material. And I'm going to use a water bottle, okay? I'm going to squirt the cheesecloth at this point and see if I can start moving the color around, okay? So I'm trying to take the color and move it from being on top of the metallic to where it looks like it's now recessed and setting down into all of the pits that I created with the Ostrich Roller. And this is the only way that I know how to get this down into there. So it really is a great technique for making something look like it has a true patina look. And if by chance, you know, you put it on too heavy somewhere and it's not moving as much as you want, go ahead and squirt the surface as well, okay? I just know that when you squirt directly onto the surface, you're gonna have less control than if you only put the water on the cheesecloth. But if you're wanting to be a little bit more aggressive and kind of move that around, you definitely can do it this way as well. Now, you can put on as much or as little as you want. It's a personal preference. If you don't like the patina finish, you can actually even skip this section of the finish, okay? So as your cheesecloth gets really dirty, okay, with all of that color on there, you are gonna have to move to a clean section so that you can actually move the color, okay, because I cleaned it up more where it will start kind of making everything look teal. So you do have to kind of keep moving around to a clean area. Okay, so I'm just going to soak this up and keep working this. If you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I will be watching with you, okay?
Why again did you like the cheesecloth over like a terry cloth?
It just happens to be the texture of it. It has, I don't know, a soft texture, but still has it's coarse enough to kind of dig in there and move the paint around. I think you just have to kind of try it to feel and know, you know, what I'm experiencing. It's kind of a hard thing to describe, but I know with just time and doing this for years, it's always worked better than just using a terry rag or t-shirt material. T-shirt material just doesn't have any kind of texture to it, so that doesn't work well at all. I mean, a substitute would be possibly a terry rag, but they have a tendency to leave a lot of lint too, so I kind of stay away from them as well.
And is the water, is it just room temperature or does it really matter?
Doesn't really matter, just good old H2O. And then just come back and critique. If there's some place that you're not happy with something or you want to make something disappear, you can come back and continue to distress on it. If you go, oh my gosh, I took off too much, guess what? You can put more on. So I'm happy at this point with the amount of distressing. I'm going to quickly blow dry this so I just dry off the surface, and we're going to get ready for our next layer.
Well, we have that floor spot.
Huh?
We have that floor spot.
That's okay, they can cut. I told you that thing.
And now I'm holding it because I'm just like freaked out about it.
Okay, we are dry and ready to go, and I'm gonna have Michelle kind of zoom in here a little closer. I want to make sure that you guys can see that we can still see the beautiful antique bronze finish, which has a look of copper. Okay, we're having a little camera difficulty there at the moment, but that was a really good zoom. You might have seen the ceiling at a second there, okay? But you've got your multiple colors. You can see the 2 colors of teal as well. That's the mermaid tail and the sea glass. And like I said, you determine how much of the patina you want to have or not, okay? Everything is dry, and you want to make sure you're dry before we go forward. But now we're going to actually go to a foil layer. And we're going to put down what is called our foil adhesive, and this is one of the parts that you need to do an actual foil transfer. I am going to roll this on, and let's just make sure that we don't have something that gets dumped here, okay? So I'm going to use just a roller. I'm going to roll over the tabletop. That's only if I can get the press and seal off of this. Okay, there we go. We love press and seal, but sometimes it gets really stuck. I'm going to pour some of this out here. We're going to load it onto the roller and cover this cute little table, okay? So when we do the foil, we have to have 2 parts to the application. You need to have a foil adhesive down, which I'm putting on. And I'm putting 100% down, even though I most likely am not going to transfer 100% with this technique. But not knowing maybe where I want the foil to transfer, I'm just going to go ahead and get full coverage. And that's one thing with the foils and the foil adhesive. If you don't have any foil adhesive, you're not going to have any transfer. Now I'm going to not only do the top of it, but I'm going to go ahead and paint this on the complete edge, because I'm going to also foil the edge of this. So I'm going to finish this up, and we're going to have to allow this to dry for no less than about 30 minutes, okay? That's one thing that's really important about working with the foil adhesive, is allowing it to dry to what's called a firm tack, which means it cannot be wet, okay? And it's never going to dry beyond the firm tack. So it's going to be very, very sticky when it's dry, but not wet. Depending on where you live, will determine how long you need to allow this to dry. And if you're in a very hot and no humid area, something like Arizona, you could probably get away with our 30 minutes. If you live in an area that has high humidity, like Florida, Louisiana, Houston, Texas, okay, make sure that you give it at least an hour or 2 to dry, because it's going to take longer to get to a firm tack. But you can see how quickly you can get this onto your surface, and we're going to take a little break and be back as soon as this is ready to go. Okay, now we are ready for our fun application of putting some foil on here. So we applied the foil adhesive, it has dried, it's nice and sticky, okay, and it's perfectly ready for the next application. Now foils, I'm just going to tell you about them briefly here. They are a metallization that is on a plastic carrier, and the color we're going to transfer is the color you're seeing, which is bronze, but the foil is actually on the back side of this. So I try to tell everybody, when you're getting ready to do a foil transfer, make sure that you are seeing the pretty side. Okay, so I've already cut a couple of pieces. We're going to lay this right down on here, and to begin with, I'm just going to take a terry rag, okay, just a nice soft rag, because I'm really not sure how much transfer I want. I don't want transfer everywhere, so I'm just going to rub to start with and kind of see what we're getting, okay? And we might just get a little bit of that everywhere, and then I'm going to take my scrubber brush and I'm going to come in here a little bit heavier in some areas and bring in the foil just a little stronger wherever maybe I want to see more of that. So this is kind of, I want to say, more of a random application as far as how the heavier areas. You're going to have a little bit of foil probably everywhere because it's going to hug the highs, so it's going to definitely put a little bit of foil around all of the hammered metal openings, okay? And then just determine where else you want to see more, okay? Now you can tell that it's starting to take some of it off, but there's enough of it on there where I'm going to try using the same piece and just moving it over. And we should still do our nice light rub first so we get a little bit everywhere. And then come in here and just rub randomly. Okay, so if you're a blingy person and you want a lot of foil, it's totally a personal preference. You can add as much or as little as you want. I always start with a little bit softer touch and then come in and add more as I feel like I really want to see more of the foil, but hopefully you can see how nice and shiny that is coming out, which is so cool. And you can always add more. Okay, you can't take it away, but you can add more. So you can always lift the foil off, take a look, decide if you want to add some more somewhere else, and keep layering it on. Okay. Now, I did the whole parameter so that we could take a sheet of this, and I'm going to do a full transfer along this little lip area here, okay? So I am just going to go ahead and scrub that on completely. And anytime you have a little area where it has a curve here, and it's always going to catch the outside area first, you have to sometimes allow the foil to release and then go back and push it into those lower areas if you're looking for 100%. We don't have to have 100%, but that should definitely bling up our outside edge. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? And then I'm just going to keep working around the table here. Foils come in many different colors, so there's lots of options. We'll have the links on here, plus we're going to have a page that you can go to, and you can go and see just about everything that we offer in our foils, so you can check everything out later. If you have any questions about any of this application, please write your comments, or write your questions in the comments, and I will definitely make sure to answer them. Sometimes I'll even come back with my fingernail if I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting the color right where I want it instead of using the brush, okay? That way I can get it into those low areas. That's always been a great little trick. And then I'm gonna have Michelle follow me to this last side. So this is an adorable little project that can easily be done in an afternoon. As you can see, this is coming together so quick and easy. You just need dry time between your layers, and yes, there are a few layers here, okay? One final thing to finish this off is, of course, you know, I'm one of those that just continues to add and add and add. I don't sometimes know when to stop. But I wanted to put a layer of glaze on here to add a little bit of depth. And what's wonderful is once you're done with the foil, okay, there's nothing else to wait for. When you're finished transferring as much of the foil as you want, you can go to your next layer. So if you were happy with that as it is, and you want it to leave it bright and shiny and not do the glaze, you don't have to, but you would have to put a top coat over the top of it. But this is a glaze that we've already mixed up. It'll be written in, we'll have the product, okay? So this is our Artsyville glaze with Van Dyke Brown colorant in it, okay? And you can see how it's gonna change the color and warm it up, but it's also gonna give it some depth, and it will also seal back the foil adhesive, because anywhere we didn't transfer foil, I'll guarantee you the table was still sticky. So you can do this not only on the top, but you can also put the glaze over all the foil edges as well. So over the foil edges, the edges of the table. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. I probably can't see what I'm doing really well, so let's try to make sure that I'm getting the glaze everywhere. So this is gonna deepen everything, add some depth, and then try to just make sure you've got it scrubbed into all of the low areas. And then that wonderful cheesecloth that I was using earlier, we will also use this to come back and wipe off the highs, okay? So what I'm doing right now is just kind of pulling off the excess glaze, and I'm doing it in a strié motion, meaning I'm trying to pull off the top and the top layer and leave it in all the nooks and crannies and crevices so that it creates that depth, okay? So once your cheesecloth gets a little dirty, somewhere we have more of this, okay? I'm gonna get a couple of clean pieces, and I wanna keep it in a nice smooth pad if possible, because that way it's only gonna pull off the top layer and leave it into all the lower areas, and we're gonna have such a beautiful depth to this. Now you can pull back as much as you want. You don't have to make it as dark as I did, but I love depth and dimensions, so I definitely brought that deeper, okay? And again, if my cheesecloth gets dirty, flip over to a clean section and just smooth it out. So all we have left to do is let this dry, and because it's a piece of furniture, we're gonna put a beautiful, nice, durable top coat on here and protect it. So there you go. A beautiful hammered copper metal finished with a little bit of a patina touch. Thank you guys for joining. Again, make sure to check out the link for all the products. Make sure to always click that button to subscribe so you'll never miss another Hometalk Live, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for joining.